To speak today. My name is Michael Cady. I'm with DZS, currently filling the role of field CTO. So I'm heavily involved with the sales process, working with the customers, with the sales engineering and solution architect team. And I love interfacing with customers and understanding their needs so we can help work together. So with that said, let me get my slide advanced. One of the things that I wanted to talk about today is not only, the applications and what's coming, right? We all understand the need for bandwidth. And obviously during the pandemic and some of the other transitional times recently, we've had more emphasis, and back to what Eric was saying about the digital divide and people needing more bandwidth and everything. It's not just the bandwidth, it's also the latency. And it's making sure that the network that you're deploying today, or the network that you're deploying today, planning for the future, is capable of supporting those future applications, not only for the bandwidth needs, but also the latency needs. And that's something that we need to talk about today to make sure that you're prepared for the future. So there's things that we know about already, obviously with the, all of our devices in the home and everything that we're using, but also from a professional standpoint, from medical or industrial or other areas in that front. But then obviously we have a lot of new innovation coming with AI and ML and everything else. So there's definitely going to be need for more and more bandwidth. But again, and I'd like to stress the importance of having a low latency network and being able to support those in the future. This is just a small sample of, some of the new applications and some of the things that are out today, and we can only imagine what's coming. So keeping that in mind, with the amount of bandwidth that's required for those applications, and you got to start thinking about the replication of that bandwidth, because you might have a home with 30, 40, 50, or like my house, 60 devices connected, and you start having a lot of bandwidth needs. So is your network ready to support it today and in the future? And this kind of summarizes just a high level of the different protocols that are being used today, kind of going along with what Eric had said. We've got fixed wireless, you've got, satellite, you've got, GFast in building, or GFast even short loop. DSL still very prevalent out there. There's still a lot of DSL on the network. And then you've got cable, and then of course fiber. And fiber could be, point-to-point Ethernet, it could be GPON, it could be XGS-PON, or planning towards the 50 gig PON environment. But you start thinking about what you're deploying today and what you're going to deploy in the future, and having the proper mindset and the proper architecture design to be able to support that transitional time is pretty important. I don't think any of this is new to anyone. We've all seen these type of slides before, talking about the different levels of demand and everything as well. But when you start thinking about a 50 gig PON environment, now whether you're using it for an enterprise application or backhaul, front haul, like a 5G, 6G transport, or if you're even just thinking about having the ability to subscribe a lot of bandwidth to many more customers, taking your split ratio, from 32 to 64, 128, or even beyond. You start thinking about the amount of bandwidth that could be not only at the OLT, but also up beyond that into the transport and into the core network itself. So we want to make sure that, we're planning for the future and having the ability to support all of those requirements as the demand continues to grow. You may be deploying GPON today. You may have XGS-PON today. Maybe it's with a combo application, or maybe it's with coexisting elements. Maybe it's on its own ODN. But one of the things that we're really excited about with the evolution of the 50 gig PON is the ability to actually do triple coexistence. And that allows you to do not only GPON, XGS-PON, but 50 gig PON on the same ODN. Now, obviously, you might have PON deployed today. You might have XGS and PON, like I mentioned, in a combo fashion, and you're going to add 50 gig PON. In a greenfield environment, you can kind of plan on that and be able to just deploy your ODN and your splitters and everything to support it. But if you're in an existing combo today with GPON and XGS, for example, and you want to add 50 gig, well, then you can use a coexisting element and overlay it on there, or use separate fiber. But it does give us the path to have the ability to do triple gig or triple coexistence with the 50 gig PON. So it's something to really consider as you're thinking through your network deployment. It's not always a rip and replace. It could be a cap and grow scenario, or it could even be an overlay, using a separate coexisting element. So it gives you a lot of flexibility, but it's something you have to consider. The other real fact that I think is very, very important is your network ready for the 50 gig service. And what I mean by that is you start thinking about, can your OLT platform handle 5 times more traffic, or 10 or 20 times more traffic? If your OLT platform today is designed for GPON or perhaps XGS or maybe combo, you might be 2 to 4 to 8 gig per ODN down, per customer. And then you start multiplying that when you get into 50 gig. And then you start thinking about the fact that you might be in a triple coexisting environment. You could have a lot of bandwidth through every OLT. Now you have to have a platform that's designed for that or prepared for that in the future. You might be deploying GPON today, but have a platform that's capable of supporting that growth. And if you start thinking about the non-blocking capabilities of your platform, along with the capacity that could be potentially pulled through at any moment, there's a lot of bandwidth. And then you got to start thinking about the oversubscription beyond the OLT. You start getting into the middle mile or your transport network itself, and you start thinking about how many OLTs are going to be trying to run on the same transport network, and how much bandwidth are you going to be needing on your transport piece. You might not need it today, but you want to be planning and preparing for that as your network evolves and you move into the new protocols and you move beyond. I think personally, GPON is still very widely deployed, as Eric had mentioned, but it's, obviously everything's evolving into XGS-PON today. And I think a lot of the new deployments are XGS-PON, but GPON still has a good place in the network as well. And it might stay in the network for many, many years. If you have customers that are unserved or underserved, and perhaps they've been living the life of, ADSL or even VDSL scenario, and all of a sudden you can offer them a 500 meg service over GPON or gig service, that's going to be tremendous for them for many years. But that you're going to be evolving into XGS-PON and into 50 gig or beyond, as time evolves. So you got to really think about that, not just the ONT, OLT side, but also into the middle mile and into your transport piece as well. All along, making sure that you don't end up in a scenario like this. You've got an incredible OLT, you've got bandwidth to your customers, but can you transport that bandwidth? Where is your bottleneck going to be? We don't want to end up in this scenario. So you start thinking about, is your middle mile transport ready for 50 gig? And you start thinking about the amount of bandwidth, but it's also the latency. And by utilizing, some of the hierarchical QoS capabilities, so you can control your upstream and downstream bottlenecks and make sure you got the right bandwidth passing at the right times. That's critically important on the OLT side, but you want to make sure that you can transport that multiple 100 or 400 gig or even beyond worth of capacity through DWDM or some sort of a transport network as well, and maintaining your low latency, really making sure that you can have your ultra high bandwidth at low latency. And that is critically important for all of the future protocols and applications and things that we saw on that first slide. So you start thinking about that, but then we've also got all of the new things that are coming with AI and ML and all of the next gen chips that are being released and being deployed today to really help with the cybersecurity. You have the cryptographic key exchange, you've got the ability for multiple services and to have not only, smarter decision making, as you can see, but the cost-effective precision, and all along trying to also improve your power savings, improve your flow classification, and have the ability to support all the predictive analytics and everything that you want in your network. So we're planning for the future. We're getting ready for the increased capabilities of all the applications. We're worried about transport. We have to make sure that we've got the proper capabilities to support your low latency, high bandwidth applications through your OLT into the transport network and beyond. But you also have to be ready for the future with all of the new capabilities for AI and ML as well. So there's a lot going on in the future, but you have to maintain what you have today. So is your network provisioning platform ready for 50 gig? And that's where you start thinking about all of the different applications and all of the different vendor scenarios you might have in your network, and being able to follow an SDN orchestration model, even for a multi-vendor network, is pretty important. And you can help you eliminate the lengthy integration and onboarding cycles once you start following all of the proper protocols and you're following all the proper forums and the standards. It's a lot easier to do interoperation between vendors. It's a lot easier to do interoperation even between OLT and ONT. And it gives you a lot of flexibility in your network, but also allows you to have that single pane of glass and have the ability to do the provisioning, network monitoring, and interoperability with your OSS, BSS, and everything as well. So this is another factor that you have to really consider as you're deploying and planning for the future of your network as well. So 50 gig PON is coming. Is your network ready? And it's not just the 50 gig PON that we have to think about. We also have to think about what you have deployed today, what your whether it's in the fixed wireless overlay, or if you have the GPON, XGS-PON scenarios, or even what else is in your network. You have to be prepared and thinking the future of, are you going to be able to support those needs, and how can you support those, with your vendors essentially. So you start thinking about the vision, and this kind of goes along with what Eric had presented earlier with the multiple different types of protocols supporting multiple needs, whether it's satellite or it's, fixed wireless applications. If you're doing your optical transport and you've got a multiple wavelength or multiple, degree ROADM scenario where you've got multiple different 100, 400, 800 gig wavelengths, but then you've also got your OLTs that might be feeding residential. It could be feeding small business. It could be feeding hotels or stadiums or any of those types of effects as well, whether it's utilizing, 50 gig or 10 gig PON, or even, XGS-PON, or even GPON itself, all of that overlaid into one network. And you want to have the ability to have the orchestration and the control of the entire network in one location. We still have a lot of applications where you're even utilizing the in-home copper or in-building copper, where you take fiber to the building and then utilize GFast in the building for that last 500 meters or 500 feet worth of capability of even getting up to gig service. So there's still a lot of applications that kind of all flow in and become part of the same network and the same transport piece as well. So there's a lot to the network. And my message today is really not only supporting your needs today, but thinking towards the future and having the ability that even if you're deploying GPON today, that you can get in XGS-PON and 50 gig and beyond, and have the platform that can support all of those evolutions and support all of the peripheral applications, like I mentioned on this slide here. So with that, I would like to just say, let's stay connected. Any questions you have, you can find us at dzsi.com. You can also reach me. It's just michael.cady@dzsi.com. And happy to talk more and absolutely be able to dig into the abilities of our platform and how we can help you with your growth.